guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Shawnee. Hello. I make videos on like all sorts of topics, but in today's video, as the title says, I'm going to be talking all about solo travel and what my recent solo trip taught me about myself, the world, and traveling alone. Let's just jump right in, guys. As usual, I have a cup of coffee with me. It's actually my first cup of the day, so cheers. So, a few months ago, last year, in late July, early August of 2020, I went on my first real solo trip. I've done a lot of traveling over the years, but it's always been with other people. I'll talk briefly about like some of the traveling I've done in my life. I've actually done quite a lot of traveling, so I'm very comfortable as a person with like the concept of traveling and going new places. I started traveling at a very young age. Growing up, we moved so much. I couldn't even tell you how many times we moved. Not only houses, but cities. For example, I was born in Los Angeles, then when I was 3, I moved to Houston, Texas. When I was 6, my family went to Toronto, Canada, because my dad went on a business trip there and we just all went with him. So that was like my first major trip as a kid. It was my first time seeing snow. I made like my first real like childhood best friend. I experienced living in another country for a few months. Till this day, I absolutely love Canada. When I was 8, my parents decided they wanted to move to Vancouver, Canada, and they decided we were going to drive there. And so we like embarked on this major road trip. Me, my parents, and my 3 younger siblings. We ended up having some major detours, and it took us like forever to actually get to Vancouver, Canada. But we did eventually get to Vancouver, Canada, and we stayed there slash like lived there, I guess, for a few months for a few different reasons. Living in Vancouver, Canada at the time, and the time was 2004, was not going to work out for my family long term. So we crossed the border, came back into America, and we settled in Seattle, Washington, and that is where I spent the bulk of my childhood for about 10 years. And now I live in Los Angeles because I'm pursuing acting. We actually moved down to Los Angeles as a family and we drove down. So I've done that West Coast road trip many times, and I did it again in my recent solo trip, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In 2013, during my time while living in Seattle, I applied for this random Craigslist gig, which was basically like a country singer who lived in Canada at the time. She was looking for a violinist and a backup singer to join her for a 3-month tour where she would basically go from Vancouver, Canada, all the way across Canada to Toronto, and then down into the US and like to all these different places in the US, Florida, Texas, Georgia, all these different places for 3 months. And she was looking for a violinist to join her, and I applied and I got the gig. And so in 2013, when I was 19 years old, I went on this 3-month tour with these 3 strangers, and that was like an experience of a lifetime. It wasn't a solo trip, but it was my first major time like being away from my family and having an experience anything like remotely like that, where I'm staying with these 3 strangers. It was the singer, it was a photographer, and then there was one guy traveling with us. He was the guitarist, and they were all older than me. We were staying in an RV, and that's how we traveled. That's where we kept all of our music equipment for the performances we did in these different cities. We would also stay with the musician's family. She had family and friends and just fans of her music in different cities where we would also stay with these people. That was the experience of a lifetime. There were definite ups and downs for me emotionally on that trip. Just the reality of not always being compatible with other people who you are living with or traveling with. I wasn't necessarily super compatible with these 3 people. So just like the ups and downs of dealing with that, I got pretty homesick at times. There were times when I wanted to quit and go home. I wasn't gonna bail on the trip, but it wasn't the easiest 3 months. But there were a lot of upsides to it, of course. I got to see so many new places, and I met so many people. And of course, the experience of performing like every other night, I'm sure helped me grow a lot in a lot of different ways. It was just one of those experiences that I'm really glad I had, but it was difficult. So that is my history with travel. So as you can see, as a person, I was pretty comfortable with like travel, and I've been doing it pretty much all my life. To get to the topic of this video, last year I went on my first solo trip. It was July 2020. The lockdown had me feeling very, very restless, as I'm sure it did a lot of people. I knew it was controversial to be traveling at the time. I know that. And I'm not saying it was necessarily the best decision, but I decided to do it and it happened. It's done. So now we're talking about it. I decided to try and be a very conscious and respectful traveler. I decided to try and be as safe as possible. This website and this company called Visit California at the time had released like a list of guidelines and advice for people who wanted to travel safely in the like later days of COVID, I guess. And so I was definitely planning on following all the safety guidelines wherever I went. Anyway, I really wanted to get out, so I decided to plan this little trip for myself. I'd been watching a lot of train travel vlogs during the lockdown, and I decided I wanted to do a long train trip. I thought, where can I go that's close? I picked San Francisco. I'd been to San Francisco a few other times when I was on those West Coast road trips with my family growing up, but never by myself. And so I picked San Francisco because it was a major city and because it was close by. I decided I was going to take the train there, AMTRAK. It was going to be an 11-hour train journey. I don't know, as I started like planning this trip and thinking about it more and more, I just decided, you know, Seattle is my hometown and I hadn't been back in years. When I'm in San Francisco, I'm basically going to be like sort of halfway there. I might as well go to Seattle on the same trip. So I decided I was going to take the 11-hour AMTRAK train journey to San Francisco, stay in San Francisco for 3 days, and then on the 4th day I was going to get on a train and go to Seattle, and that was going to be a 21-hour train journey, and then I was going to stay in Seattle for, it was like 3 or 4 days, and then I was going to get on a plane and come back to Los Angeles. And that is what I did. I vlogged the whole thing. Of course, that was one aspect I was really looking forward to after watching so many travel vlogs. I wanted to create my own. The vlogs from that entire trip are up on my channel. First, I'll talk about what train travel alone was like. If you guys have been following me for a while, then you know about my history with social anxiety. For the most part, I have overcome my social anxiety, but I'm still not always the most outgoing person in certain situations. So one example of that would be if I'm by myself in an environment where I don't know anyone there. I'm not going to be the most outgoing person, and it's not going to be typical that I'm going to go up to other people and start interactions. You know, knowing that, putting me in a situation of being on a train for 11 hours with a bunch of strangers, I didn't really interact with many people on the train. Yeah, I think it would have been cool to be the kind of person that can just start these conversations with these other strangers, because AMTRAK and like long train journeys are a unique situation. Basically, you can either get a car, like a sleeping car, or you can just get a coach seat, or you can get a business class seat. I don't think they have business class available or something. Anyway, I got a coach seat. Coach is super comfortable on AMTRAK, and right now you get 2 seats to yourself because of COVID and social distancing. Everyone wears masks when they're walking the train and pretty much at all times unless you're eating. So I booked this ticket. I did this 11-hour train journey. First of all, let me start by saying I loved my solo travel trip. I had a great time. This trip just confirmed for me how much I absolutely love train travel. I'm an introvert, I'm an independent person and an independent worker, and I just always have all these creative projects going on. So I had absolutely no problem occupying my time. And so I think it's great if you're that kind of person. And you're by yourself. If you're not that kind of person, if you're an extrovert, if you're not really an independent worker, you like being in groups, you like socializing, you like doing things with other people, then I could see you maybe running out of activities. I could see you maybe wanting to go on this kind of trip with someone else and having someone else to talk to the whole time. But for me, I absolutely loved the alone time. I spent a lot of time just watching the world go by and listening to music, and it's just like this amazing form of escapism, and it's just so magical, and there's just something about it that I can't even really put into words. There's an observation car in the train where you can go, and you're sitting and the chairs are facing these large windows, and it never got boring. It never gets boring, in my opinion. So at the end of my 11-hour train journey from Los Angeles to San Francisco, I arrived in San Francisco at Emeryville Station, which is just like across the water from San Francisco, and then I was just planning on hopping in an Uber and crossing the water to get to my hotel. So when I got to San Francisco, it was dark, it was night, and I don't know, the reality of the fact that I was in this whole new city by myself really hit me when I got off the train. Like, I went into the AMTRAK station and I was just starting to feel a little bit like, I'm in this new city by myself, it's dark, I have to get to my hotel, I have to check in, oh my god, I hope I booked everything right. You know, the little bit of like anxiety of being in a new place and by yourself, just the responsibility of like, ain't nobody else gonna take care of you, it's you. You are alone in this new city. I booked my Uber, went to my hotel, I stayed at hotel, what is it called? 36-1? I'll put it here. I loved that hotel. It was in an absolutely amazing location. As soon as you walk out the door, there was literally the entrance called Dragon's Gate, the entrance to Chinatown, which the Chinatown in San Francisco is the largest one in the world. Not in the world, sorry. The largest one in the country. And then like you walk the other direction and there's Union Square, there's like downtown, there's all these buses, there's the Muni buses, there's this underground like train system that I didn't even discover until my last day there. Being in San Francisco by myself was interesting. It was such an interesting experience. I had a great time. I was visiting during COVID, so a lot of things were closed. Outdoor dining was open, but certain things, you know, that you would have been able to do before the pandemic, I obviously couldn't do. So I had to do a lot of outdoor things. During the time I was there, I would just leave my hotel every day and I would go get coffee and then I would just start exploring. I did not have an agenda, guys, and I didn't want to. I just decided I was gonna just go wherever I went, and it was pretty freaking great. I explored Chinatown, I explored downtown, I just walked. I would look up a neighborhood I wanted to go to and there was a bus going there and I would easily find it. It was so easy to use public transportation there. I went to the Mission District, fell in love with that place. I went to Mission Dolores Park. I think every single day I was there, just feeling like I was a part of the city for a few days by doing these like low-key things, not these huge touristy things. I did go to the Golden Gate Bridge, which was absolutely amazing. On my last day in San Francisco, I did have like these moments of loneliness. It was a Saturday and Mission Dolores Park got really crowded and all these groups of friends were out at the park and I was there by myself, and being surrounded by so many like loud groups having fun did make me wish that I either had friends in the city or that I was the kind of person that could go up to one of these random groups and start talking to them and maybe join them. It just had me wishing that I was a part of one of these groups. But instead of going into detail about like the rest of the trip and specific aspects of it, I'd like to kind of talk about some broader takeaways. Overall, I really like solo travel. That's what this trip taught me. And I knew I would because of the kind of person that I am. If you're an introvert, if you're an independent person, and you don't like need other people to do everything with you, you will like solo travel. One thing I like about solo travel is you get to make every decision for yourself. You get to decide where you want to go when you're in a new city. You get to decide where you want to go for breakfast, where you want to explore that day, where you want to stay. It's only about what you want to do. And that's one thing I love. In the past, when I'd gone to visit San Francisco, it had been with family, and we pretty much just did what my parents said we were gonna do. In the past, we'd always gone to the waterfront as a family, and that is a huge tourist attraction area. I had no desire to go there this time. I just was not interested in it. So I explored the neighborhoods, which wouldn't have happened if I'd been with my family. They probably would have been like, oh, this is kind of boring. Can we do something else? But for me, I loved just walking around the neighborhoods and just walking in a random thrift store or sitting in a random cafe. So I'm just gonna kind of talk about like the pros and cons, or the things I liked and the things I didn't like about solo travel. I mean, I guess having these moments of loneliness, that was a downside. And not everyone who goes on a solo trip is gonna have those moments of loneliness, because it just really depends on who you are and if you're the kind of person that can be in a new city and like have these connections with other people and these interactions with other people. I'm just not really that kind of person. It really does take someone else starting an interaction with me a lot of times. When I got to Seattle, it was a lot different than San Francisco for many reasons. I stayed in this studio, it was an Airbnb. I stayed in the neighborhood where I went to high school, and Seattle was different. It was such a nostalgic trip. I went to all these familiar places that I wanted to go back to feel that nostalgic feeling. I pretty much met up with a friend every single day. I kind of talked a little bit about fears I had or things that made me nervous going into the solo trip. And just safety. I'm not generally scared when I'm out in the world doing things alone during the day. When I was in San Francisco, I didn't go out at night. When it got dark, I was back at my hotel just for safety reasons. There was one night I did go out just a few blocks, and it made me nervous because there just weren't enough people on the street. But I'm not the kind of person that gets scared being out and about like during the day by myself. Things that this solo trip taught me. It taught me that I really like solo travel. I mean, you can have an idea like, maybe I'll like solo travel, but then you actually do it and it gets confirmed for you. I loved having those long periods of time where it was just me listening to my music, watching the world go by. Or me by myself in my hotel room, watching Netflix at night, ordering whatever I wanted for dinner. It taught me that, every city has its own vibe and personality and culture. San Francisco is very, very different than Los Angeles. They're both in California, but they are like different worlds. And Seattle is a completely different world than San Francisco. That is one thing you will learn when you solo travel, that each city is a different world. It taught me that, I don't want to say something like people are generally good everywhere. I think that's kind of bullshit, but I mean, in a way, yeah, there are good people everywhere. There are kind people everywhere. If something would have happened to me, like out in public or something, I feel like other people would have helped me. And I know it's not as simple as good and bad either, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of what it taught me about myself and about the world and about solo travel. There are certain kind of people who solo travel is definitely for. And there are certain kinds of people who it's not for, and who group travel is for. Would I do it again? Hell yes, I would do it again. But, I will add, I get personal on this channel, so I don't mind mentioning this in this video, but I've been single my whole life. Sorry, I meant to say I've been single my whole life until now. So the kind of person that I am, it's like all these different things make me who I am and made me who I was then, Being single my whole life, being an independent person, being an oldest child, being the kind of person that's always done all these things by myself. I'm an introvert. Growing up, I had social anxiety. All these different things made me who I was. But now, being in my first relationship, it is interesting because of the person that I am, I would only want to be with someone if being with them is either equally enjoyable or more enjoyable than being alone. So I've now met this person, this girl who I like being with as much as I like being alone. And I think that's the key when you're an introvert. So that being said, while I would be interested in going on other solo trips, I also now have this person in my life who I would be interested in traveling with just as much as I'd be interested in traveling by myself. So I'd really be equally open and equally interested in either thing. Another solo trip or just traveling with her. And I have gone on one trip with my person. We went to Joshua Tree. With, I think also feels different than traveling with a group of friends or traveling with family. But it's kind of hard to sum up the ideas I thought I was going to convey in this video. It's kind of hard sometimes conveying the ideas you want to convey, but I hope that generally this video was kind of like what you were hoping for when you clicked on it. It's just me sharing my experience on my recent solo trip. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you took something away from it, something helpful maybe. This was fun to talk about and share with you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, stick around, give this video a thumbs up if you did like it, comment below, say hi, and I will see you guys again very soon with a brand new video. Bye.